this the wholeness of life, the joy of life. But some of the other duties you may be on, again, it depends on the level people wish to degree to get to. We would encourage, for instance, daily meditation, daily contemplation, just a time where you consciously connect with the God force and are aware of your place in society, aware of the gods, aware of creation around you, to behold everything you look at, even as a manifestation of the divine and the divinity within you and all things. That would be, if you're part of a hearth, then there would need to be hearth activities. Some of these are going to sort of be social, just comradeship, which is in a way is a religious thing. It's a gift to meet and act and interact with other people, other beings, but then of course there's the hearth blottar. Now the Odinic Rite have their liturgical year. We have, for instance, a bare minimum would be the 12 monthly blots. This represents, again, the continuum, not just of the year, but of actually life. The connection with past, present, future, the whole continuity and integration of all things. So we have the 12. It's the ritual wheel, the 12 major blots. These are by no means the sum of the blots. Actually, we do encourage daily worship, blot. Sometimes this can't be achieved, so weekly, but so on the ritual wheel there's at the minimum of the 12, but then we have many other secondary rituals. And another thing, the Court of Gothi are at least once a year, usually more than that, because our religion is living, it's not stuck in the past, it's evolving, so it's got to be vital for today. And we will review our ritual cycle and see if perhaps there's a new ritual, should be a new blot date should be inaugurated. And we've done this with the worldwide blots over the past couple of years, where as our community, our family, our folk family, our movement has grown, it's beneficial that certain times all members, or as many members as possible, wherever they may be, can actually be united in the performance of a religious observance, a blot. So we formulated then a whole cycle of what we've called the Midgarth-wide rituals. So you'll see again, these are things which are dynamic, they're living, they're evolving, they're developing, and hopefully by observance and by becoming involved in the actual practice, it automatically strengthens you. It's the same as any aspects of life. If someone decides they want to become physically very, they've decided to build their body up, they can buy a book on it, but they have to actually have to do it. They have to have a certain diet. They have to take physical exercises now to build the other aspects of ourselves, our spiritual lives, our appreciation of the wonders of our own religion, our own space that we inhabit, by actually practicing blot. It strengthens your spiritual side as well. So it's very important that as often and as regularly as possible, Odinists do actually perform these spiritual practices.
Is blot the only spiritual practice?
No, I mean I use this as a blot is a very specific one, I suppose. Often, I mean, I'm using it sometimes as a cover term. There's also sumbel as another one, which is a kind of ritualized drinking. Now there's a social aspect, but it's far different from just meeting up down a bar and having a couple of beers. It's actually a time where it's social, but there's a religious element to it as well, where because you are remembering, often in a sambal you will toast the ancestors in one round, someone in the present and something for the future. It can be done in different ways, of course. I mean, there are rounds and rounds. It's not an excuse to just drink vast quantities. In fact, in the Havamal, which is another Odinic writing, there are explicit warnings against over-drinking, and how this, even in the virtues, drunkenness is not a good thing, but the enjoyment of life with and realizing, so a sambal is enjoyable, and you're actually consciously celebrating life with others. Of course, other practices, as we've talked about, will include meditation practice, lone, ritual, hailing, acceptance, merging. I mean, blots, or all these things in a way are times where you very consciously pay heed to more than just the mundane. Sorry.
Do Odinists pay attention to the changes in life from birth through to death?
Yes, part of we have our rites of passage rituals. So, for instance, naming for a child, a new life. The naming is given. Naming is a very important thing, and the name should obviously be carefully considered. It's going to be their badge that they will wear, and again, it connects very often with family and folk. So yes, we have the naming. Then there are all the rites of hand fasting and burial or funeral rites. So every aspect, just as with most religions, every aspect of marking the changes in life, the important passages of life are marked by ritual, service, worship, whichever term people use.
Oftentimes with a set of rituals, religions also have a set sort of mythology. What is the mythology of Odinism?
The mythology of Odinism, is multi-layered. On one level, it can be seen to, the idea of mythology is to express profound truths which are almost beyond our words to express literally. I mean, they're not literal, that's the first thing. Mythology is not literal. It just expresses essential truths in ways which are easier to understand, perhaps. It depicts them symbolically. It also, I think, encodes wisdom in times where there are great cycles, ages, some throughout the multiverse. Some of these cycles, the intellect is and awareness is at a premium, at a zenith, and then through a downward spiral it comes to lower points. So mythology is something which is going to last encoded through all these times, and as awareness again grows, the messages within become revealed. So that's why they're on so many levels. So Odinist mythology covers the rhythm of life. If we look at the way the mythology has been recorded and unfolds, it's kind of in, you could say almost in five acts almost. There's the creation period, and then there is the time before the death of Balder, and then there is the death of Balder, then the time immediately after, and then the Ragnarok, which kind of sets the end of the myth cycles. But that's the time of, so it's a time of death, but also rebirth, because then following the Ragnarok, there's the continuum.
This mythology, that's part of how it's also established in the ritual cycle?
Yes. It's mirrored. It's mirrored very often by. It's very clearly in the 12 rituals. the 12 blots of the wheel cycle, it follows that same rhythm, which we also see in the seasons. You know, we can liken creation myth to spring. We can liken Ragnarok to the winter new spring. You know, that changeover. But also with mythology, it very much at an essential level relates to the individual, and it's actually a guided path to lead to a higher understanding, a higher awareness, a higher consciousness, the Odin consciousness. It's and in that, Ragnarok is seen as that time when it could be called liberation, enlightenment, the attainment of cosmic consciousness, the attainment of Odin consciousness, depending on it's known in other systems as well, of course. This is just our path which suits our people.
I want to talk a bit now about the Odinic Rite.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about the early history of the Odinic Rite? What are its sort of roots, to speak?
Yeah, it's very hard to really identify the exact roots at all, because like anything organic, I mean, the whole Odinism under various names or no name at all has obviously existed since the dawn of our folk, and it's been through these periods of rise and suppression, and now reawakening. So the impulse for the Odinic Rite itself was kind of part and parcel of a whole gradual build-up of the energies, the impulse which led to what we term the reawakening. What we can know is that from the 1930s, there was a kind of an upspringing and a rising up of quite a few overtly Odinist groups, societies, ideas. This continued, interrupted by the catastrophe of the Second World War, of course, which disrupted a lot of development of all things. But then in the 50s again, it kind of picked up. So throughout the 50s, and I'm talking mainly of Europe here and Britain, possibly it happened elsewhere, but only speaking of Europe, there were a kind of whole myriad of individuals and societies which would spring up and fold away again, interested in or were Odinist or overtly. Some were purely focused on academic aspects. Some actually were more driven by the spiritual side. But it was this whole kind of process, that rising and falling. It was quite confusing in a way. This really continued through the 60s, but was becoming more solidified. And then in the 70s, some of those involved, two specifically I'll mention here, had decided that the Odinist, this reawakening, needed some sort of, it was chaotic, and you needed to direct this energy in a way to actually make it positive. So this was John Gibbs Bailey, known, his Odinist name was Hosgold, and John Yole, whose Odinist name was Stubber. Now Hosgold had been an Odinist since the 30s, and so he was very influential as well. Great influence on John Yole, for instance, or he was one of the influences. So they, from the experience and the kind of this bubbling away of this Odinist thought, they distilled it, if you like, into and gave it a form which could, a structure which is going to last in society and not just fold. So that's when the Odinic Rite basically was then founded in 1973. At that time, it was called the Committee, the Odinist Committee for the Restoration of the Odinic Rite. Bit of a clumsy title, and in 1980, it just was the Odinic Rite. At the same time, interestingly, in the early 70s, there had been, then independently in Vinland, Iceland, other groups had sprung up. Els Christensen's Odinist Fellowship, another very influential group. It was one of the. She was one of the people that actually have had an influence on the development of the Odinic Rite. She would have to be acknowledged as someone we admired and respect greatly, and she helped also in the early days of the Rite's formation. There had been, as I'd said in interview with Gothi, independently we'd had there'd been the Heimdall League, which we'd run. There was a group, Asbjorn had Freyhalf. That was very purely closed and concentrating purely on the esoteric side. We joined Heimdall League, ran out. It came to its natural end, its useful end, and there was a choice: do we now just continue it for no apparent reason or for our own ends, or do we reinvent the wheel and start a new group, or actually do we think it's pointless, this continual craze to want to reinvent the wheel? We'll get behind, we'll join the Odinic Rite, and because we could see in that the structure, it's the idea, the basis was good, the foundation was good, and we wanted to join and support what we see as the most productive and the best vehicle for Odinism.
How does that structure or concept differ from other denominations of Odinism?
Yeah, it's good term denominations, because I just want to emphasize that all religions have different strands, different schools of thought and denominations, which is a familiar term. And this is good. This is actually good for a religion, providing they can avoid actual negative feuds. But the Odinic Rite structure is probably, again, we try and adhere within our structure towards the aristocratic principle in a way where we do not, for instance, we recognise that different members are going to have different abilities but also different levels of commitment. So different talents, different gifts, and those who want to work, we try and fit them in areas they're going to actually, their actual innate gifts are going to be highlighted and used most effectively. The overall guide of the guiding body of the Odinic Rite is the Court of Gothi. We will meet and we will basically decide on policy, direction, ruling at times, but we get advice, and we seek advice from other members. We have, for instance, our prison outreach wing, we have our workers, we have our advisors on that. But I think then on a group level or unit level, we have hearths. These are groups of Odinists, several Odinists together. They can meet regularly. The branches we have, the international branches, can't be considered as separate. They're purely administrative bodies. So we like, and then of course there's the individual members. So this structure really reflects in a way our actual bodies, that each individual member is a cell of a greater body, and we're not autonomous. Some of the other groups are really like an umbrella. They will have, this is the name, this is our basic outlook, and within that, you can form your own totally autonomous, independent groups, kindreds, whatever, and maybe perhaps once a year they'll have a gathering, but we're much more structured in our development. There is much more. It's not dogmatic and it's not rigid. It just gives foundation and guide. So if someone is in the Odinic Rite, they are going to share very similar, not identical, because everyone, there's room for different. Even within a denomination, you're going to have different experiences, different outlooks, different levels of awareness, for instance, and understanding. But if someone is in the Odinic Rite and they live in Argentina, their outlook, their code is going to be identical to someone who is perhaps living in the tip of Scotland or in Alberta or anywhere. It's a unified movement, not broken into autonomous bodies or semi-autonomous bodies. It has one discipline, one code. I think that's probably one of the main differences. Also, we're not particularly, we're not drawn to the reenactment aspect so much, if I put it like that. And our inspiration comes not just from a particular period. We're not Norse focused. The Norse era, the Norse age, is just one of the patchworks on the whole patchwork of our folk, and it's a fairly recent one. We don't consider it was a golden age at all. It was an age. It was a heroic age in many ways. So we look to that, but we don't focus upon it for either as the roots of our religion, the roots of our folk, or the roots of our very existence. We look far, far, far back. The aspect also, while it's important to understand how our ancestors lived, we don't seek to try and recreate that, because firstly it's not desirable, secondly you can't. You cannot recreate a whole era. Even the air we're breathing now is different. Everything, you cannot recreate it, and if you try, it's interesting. There's time for it, but it's not something we focus on.
In general, there's two streams of thought within Odinic life. Generally, they can be termed as universal, where all people are able to practice Odinism, regardless of race, color, creed, status. And there's the other stream is the Folkish stream, which basically believes that you should practice Odinism based on a lineage of descent. What's the Odinic Rite stance on this?
The Odinic Rite is folk-based. Odinism is the organic ancestral religion pertaining specifically to our people. It's in the same way as Shinto can be considered the folk faith of the Japanese. The various Native American religions are there. But we believe in the ancestral focused aspect. The universalism actually demeans man, we think, mankind as a whole, because in nature and in creation is a wonderful diversity. No one suggests there should be one species of dog or animal or tree. In fact, life as we know it would cease to exist without this diversity. Humanity and everything that exists is part of nature. The gods are part of nature. We're a manifestation of God energy, nature energy in a world of form. We should hail diversity, and in that is actually true love of species.
Tell us a bit about the evolution of the OR, where it's come from, where it is at the present, and where it's going to in the future.
The phases of it really. Its early stages were concerned with actually establishing regular Odinist worship, Odinist group, and to a degree making Odinism known, because it was so, even at that time, even amongst those who had called themselves pagan, Odinism was really virtually unknown. So it was to kind of emerge. It was the emergence of Odinism. Of course, membership in the initial days being very low, their activity was going to be lessened. So it was purely at one point, although it had members, it actually always from the start had members throughout the world, adhering really to the Odin nation concept, which is one of the concepts we hold. But in actual physical terms, it was based purely in southern England, because as it rippled out from there, it's part of the development would have been actual Odinist practice or Odinic Rite practice, hearths forming in other nations, other geographic nations.
What was the first hearth ever formed?
The first hearth ever formed was, well, actually there were two. They were formed at kind of the same time. It was a hearth called the Light of Midgarth hearth, which has now dropped, and that was really a way of giving a hearth which could be joined by anyone. It was kind of like a cover hearth for all. That was soon felt to be pointless. So then there was the Heimgest hearth. Heimgest, of course, being one of the tribal chieftains of the Angles and Saxons, the Jutes, who basically